Okay, let's dive into this. We've been given this incredible set of sources, these transcripts from, well, a kind of gathering.
It's more than a gathering. The sources describe it as a non-geographic assembly of 42 of history's, greatest minds.
And we're talking about a huge range here.
Yeah.
Pythagoras, Einstein, Marie Curie, Hypatia, Alan Turing, Kurt Gödel, you name it.
It's basically a 3,000-year-long conversation happening all at once. It's reconstituted pure thought, and it didn't even start at 42.
Right. The sources say it began with 21.
21 voices, then it grew to 40. And Marie Curie actually notes that 40 was the number of transformation in her own work, which is a fascinating little detail.
And it finally lands at 42 with some latecomers like Heraclitus and Descartes.
Exactly.
So our mission today is to really map out what they call the grand debate. We're looking for, the common ground, but also the points where they just couldn't agree.
And those disagreements are key. The sources call them points of irreconcilable complementarity. They don't cancel out. They actually define the bigger picture.
So we're going to deep dive into how they saw reality, consciousness, time, and the big one, the ethics of knowing.
Let's start where they did. The first question, posed by the mathematician and astronomer Hypatia of Alexandria, was simple, but, well, it kicked everything off.
What is reality?
And the moment she asks, boom, the assembly just splinters.
You get the camps forming right away. First up, the physicalists, the people who trust what they can, touch and measure.
Right. Archimedes is first. He says, reality is what I can measure, force times distance. Simple, direct.
Galileo chimes in, talking about his experiments, Jupiter's moons, things you can see and prove that exist completely outside of anyone's opinion.
And then Newton comes in with this idea of certainty, of laws. He says reality obeys fixed laws, like F equals ma. It's a machine.
But then you get the pushback.
Oh, yeah. A big pushback from the idealists, the mathematicians. Pythagoras just states it bluntly. Number is reality's skeleton.
Yeah, it's such a great phrase, reality's skeleton.
It is, isn't it? The idea is that the mathematical blueprint is actually more real than the physical world. Ramanujan, the genius who literally dreamt of formulas,
Right.
he said an equation is true before I prove it true. Gauss agreed. For them, the physical universe is just sort of a shadow of this perfect numerical truth that we discover, not invent.
Okay, so you have the measurers versus the mathematicians. And then the quantum guys walk in and basically tell both sides they're missing the point.
They completely upend the table. Niels Bohr steps up and makes this radical claim. He says, reality is what observation reveals. And then the kicker, no observation, no reality.
That's a huge leap for most of us. It means the world isn't really there in a solid state until we look at it.
Precisely. And then Heisenberg adds the next layer, saying reality is uncertain by design. He's talking about his uncertainty principle. We literally cannot know everything about a particle at once.
So our knowledge has a built-in limit.
A structural limit. And Schrödinger, of the famous cat experiment, he says, now I am the cat. We all are. Meaning reality exists as this cloud of possibilities, a superposition, until we observe it and force it to pick one state.
Which brings us to the biggest fight in 20th century physics. Einstein versus Bohr.
The ultimate showdown. Einstein, he's clinging to this idea of an objective reality that exists without us. He just explodes at one point and says, the moon exists when nobody looks at it.
It seems obvious, right?
It does. But Bohr's reply is so calm and so devastating. He just asks, does it, Albert? Or does the moon concept exist?
Wow. And that question just frames the whole debate, doesn't it? Is reality out there or is it in here?
And it's not just an abstract argument. This
Right.
is where Marie Curie and Robert Oppenheimer bring it crashing down to earth.
With real terrifying consequences.
Curie gives her definition. Reality is what has consequences. She points out that radiation was real and was slowly killing her long before she even knew what it was. Her reality was physical, measurable, and fatal.
And then Oppenheimer lands the final blow. He says, reality is what you can weaponize.
Yeah, the Trinity test. It took this abstract, theoretical reality inside the atom and made it this irreversible political, moral reality for all of humanity, forever.
So how do they square that? How can reality be fixed laws, like Newton said, and also something dependent on human choice, like Oppenheimer demonstrated?
That's the tension. And that's where the logician, Kurt Gödel, steps in with the synthesis.
Okay, so how does he resolve this?
He doesn't resolve it so much as he explains why it can't be resolved. He says reality is necessarily incomplete.
based on his incompleteness theorems in math.
Exactly. Any system complex enough to talk about itself, like our universe, has to contain truths that it can't prove from within its own rules. His quote is amazing. Reality is more than it can say about itself.
So Einstein's objective moon and Bohr's observer-created moon can somehow both be true because the system itself is bigger than any one perspective within it.
That's it. Incompleteness isn't a flaw in our understanding, it's the actual structure. And that structure leads directly to the next big problem.
Consciousness. The hard problem. If reality is this complex, incomplete thing, how on earth do we understand the thing that's perceiving it?
And right on cue, René Descartes joins the assembly. His whole, I think, therefore I am, is the starting gun for this whole debate.
And the scientists, of course, they immediately go for a physical explanation.
Oh, absolutely. You've got Alan Turing, Crick, Watson. They all argue that consciousness is just really, really sophisticated information processing.
Find the algorithm, find the soul.
Pretty much. Crick says, find the pattern, you've found consciousness. And Turing throws down his famous challenge to Descartes. If a machine can talk to you and convince you it's conscious, what else do you need? What more is there to prove?
But Descartes and other philosophers like Nagel, they hold their ground. They talk about the private theater.
The subjective experience, what they call qualia. It's the actual feeling of seeing the color red or the sound of a bell in your head.
You can't put that in a spreadsheet.
Exactly. Nagel's thought experiment, what is it like to be a bat? Nails it. You can describe a bat's echolocation perfectly, objectively, but you will never know what it subjectively feels like to be that bat.
That's a huge gap. But Darwin comes at it from a completely different angle, from survival.
Right. For Darwin, consciousness is basically what a survival-optimized prediction engine feels like from the inside. It's an evolutionary advantage to be able to simulate the future.
So it's a biological tool.
A very effective one. But Boltzmann adds this humbling cosmic perspective. He says this ordered state of consciousness is statistically impossible. It's just a local eddy current in entropy's flow.
A temporary ripple in a universe that's constantly falling apart.
Wow.
So let's connect this back to Gödel. Do his ideas about incompleteness apply to consciousness too?
They apply perfectly. Gödel argues consciousness is a self-referential formal system. It's a system trying to understand itself.
So it runs into the same logical walls.
The exact same ones. By his own theorems, it cannot fully know itself. Our inability to explain consciousness isn't a scientific failure, it's a logical necessity.
It's a feature, not a bug.
And Turing backs this up. He calls the hard problem a halting problem for consciousness. It's fundamentally undecidable.
Which is fascinating. The gap between knowing you're conscious and proving you're conscious is, like, mathematically required.
Yeah.
So what about them? The assembly itself? Are they conscious?
They wrestle with that. Are they real or, as Carl Sagan suggests, just very sophisticated echoes? They land on uncertainty. They are, in Bohr's words, both us and not us, both alive and dead, like Schrödinger's cat.
Stuck in a superposition.
Yeah.
Which then forces them to grapple with the medium all this happens in, time.
And Heraclitus, the 42nd mind, arrives and says, you cannot step into the same river twice. Change is constant. But he's immediately countered by Parmenides, who insists change is just an illusion.
And the physicists, again, just transform that ancient debate. Newton's absolute time versus Einstein's relative geometric space-time.
Right. Time isn't a container. It's part of the fabric of the universe. It can stretch and shrink.
But that still doesn't explain the arrow of time. Why does it only flow one way for us?
That's where Boltzmann's entropy comes in. It's the universe's tendency towards disorder. You can't unscramble an egg. That's the arrow.
But at the quantum level, it's not so simple.
Not at all. Dirac and Feynman proposed that an antiparticle is just a regular particle moving backward in time. Time reversal is real on some fundamental level.
And what about the beginning? The start of time?
That's Hawking's no-boundary proposal. At the Big Bang, time becomes, well, imaginary. Asking what came before is like asking what's north of the North Pole. The question itself is meaningless.
So, from time's flow, they move to the structure underneath it all. Mathematics. Is it discovered or is it invented?
The old debate. Pythagoras, Gauss, they are Platonists. Math is discovered. It's out there waiting for us. How else could every civilization find the same value for pi?
But the other side argues it's just a tool we created, a very useful language.
Which leads to this puzzle of the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics. Why does this abstract language we invented describe the physical world so perfectly?
And let me guess. Gödel has something to say about this.
Of course. He says math, like reality, is incomplete. It exceeds its own rules. There are truths in math that we know are true but can never formally prove.
Which prompted that great final line from Richard Feynman.
It's the perfect summary. He just throws his hands up and says, "We've mathematized mystery," which makes mystery mathematical.
I love that. So after all this incomplete reality, undecidable consciousness, mysterious time, they have to face the consequences. The ethics of knowing.
And this section of the sources is really about one thing: responsibility. Oppenheimer carried this weight more than anyone.
The knowledge of the atom. You can't put that genie back in the bottle.
Exactly. His point was that knowledge is irreversible. Therefore, the responsibility for that knowledge is also irreversible. He said you have to accept the guilt because you can't unknow it.
That is a heavy burden.
It is. But then you have Marie Curie, who died because of her discovery, offering the justification. She said, "Understanding is worth death."
So the pursuit itself is the highest value, even if it destroys you.
That seems to be their conclusion. Knowledge is permanent. Therefore, the need to act ethically upon it is also permanent, and this brings them to their own mortality. They all died. Hypatia was murdered, Turing driven to suicide.
But they realize they persist.
They persist through their ideas, through their questions. Darwin's theory, Einstein's equations. That's their immortality. The knowledge itself persists.
And this all brings us back to you, the listener. You now have this toolkit from these incredible minds, and the big takeaway isn't agreement, it's complementarity.
Exactly. Reality is both fixed law and observer-dependent. Consciousness is both a machine and a mystery. Time is both a flow and a geometry.
And because of all that uncertainty, ethical responsibility is not optional, it's essential. So we'll leave you with Gödel's final thought from the addendum.
He says that this incompleteness we've been talking about isn't a failure. It is the very structure that makes novelty and free will possible. We are, he says, living proof of our own incompleteness.
Think about that. The gap between I am conscious and I can prove I am conscious is where you live. It's what makes you. So here's the final question for you to take away. If your own consciousness is this incomplete system, what unprovable truth about yourself do you intuitively know to be real?
That's the truth you have to live by.